Welcome back to the Occult Rejects. Tonight we are talking about the divine feminine. But we have to be careful with that phrase because the divine feminine is not just one thing. It is not just goddess worship. It is not just fertility. It is not just sex, motherhood, nature, or moonlight. It is also sovereignty, terror, prophecy, grief, magic, war, kingship, death, healing, initiation, and forbidden knowledge. That is why this subject has always made certain people nervous. When the feminine sacred shows up outside approved religious boundaries, it often gets demonized. The goddess becomes an idol. The priestess becomes dangerous. The healer becomes a witch. The woman with visions becomes accused of deception, possession, or heresy. And to the ignorant, the uninitiated, and the fearful, anything sacred that does not fit inside their narrow theology starts to look satanic. But that reaction says more about fear than truth. Across the ancient world, we find the sacred imagined through feminine forms. Inanna descending into the underworld, Isis gathering the broken body of Osiris, Hathor as music, intoxication, love in the cow-horned sky, Mary as Virgin Mother and Queen of Heaven, Mary Magdalene as witness and teacher, Sophia as wisdom fallen into matter, the Shekinah as indwelling presence, the Black Madonna as dark maternal mystery, and the witch as the demonized remainder of female spiritual power. These figures are not all the same. They do not come from one universal religion, and we do not need to fit them into one story. But they do reveal a pattern. Again and again, human beings have imagined the sacred through the mother, the virgin, the queen, the mourner, the lover, the prophetess, the witch, and wisdom herself. So tonight we are asking what happens when the feminine face of the divine is honored, feared, absorbed, renamed, or driven underground. And why does this sacred keep returning through the body, the womb, the tomb, the moon, the dream, the cave, the crossroads, and the woman who knows too much? And to talk about that topic tonight, we got a whole bunch of us here. And to start that off, we do got Judith DeLune. What is going on, Judith? How are you?
I am fine. Thank you for having me. I look forward to this discussion. And everyone else, you can find me normally on X, Spreaker, and on YouTube as the Loon. And I'm glad to see here with glad to be here with the whole gang.
Oh yeah, we got a lot of us here tonight. It's gonna be awesome. We got my man Jin the Ninja. What is going on, Friday? How the hell are you?
What is up, boss? Mr. 99 or Mr. 93? I guess I didn't.
33, 93, 99 now. All right.
It always changes. Okay, well, that's good.
Go for 69 next.
Okay, next time. So I'm really excited. You always email me the invites and I'm always game to join, but I saw Divine Feminine and I saw everybody was coming and I was like, well, this is kind of my wheelhouse a little bit, at least. I mean, I started with you, Nick, discussing the Mahavijays and the Kabbalistic Tree of Life. So, and I also did the Aeon of the Daughter with the Grey Lodge. So, it all kind of makes sense. So I'm really excited to be here. If people want to check me out, they can go to youtube.com/@thresholdsaints or substack.com/thresholdsaints. You can find all of the Threshold Saints episodes as well as the Grey Lodge. And we've got Battlestar Galactica coming up on Friday, so everybody can stay tuned for that. And I have multiple episodes of Saints dropping with the people from Apocalypse Confidential, which is a very cool online lit mag they say is going to be the new Vice. So let's see where it goes. Cool. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
All right. Sounds nice, man. Good for you. All right. And we got Kyva Rose. What is going on, Kyva? How are you?
Hey, good to be here with you all. I'm excited to talk about this topic. Everybody can find me at Kyva Rose on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. And you can get a reading if you go to my website at 11kyvarose33.com. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for joining us. I appreciate it. And Ethan Indigo. What is going on, sir? How are you?
Peace. Most excellent to be here with everyone, especially our divine feminine ladies here. I also have given this a great deal of thought, being masculine or male Claude that I am. So I'm excited to talk about this. Recent articles on Occult Research Institute, or what am I getting wrong? Occult
Research Institute. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Okay, occultresearchinstitute.org, and other articles on geometry of energy, and appreciate everybody and any communication. So feel free to reach out.
thank you very much for making it, Ethan. I was actually hoping very much that you did make it. I actually thought your talk on the, I guess, the feminine with marijuana was actually really interesting. So
Yeah, that was
Hoping
one of my
yeah.
favorite presentations.
yeah, so I was hoping you'd kind of bring in mind for that as well on this topic. We got my man Magus. Brandon, what is up? How are you?
I am quite swell. Thank you so much there, Ketterl, the Cardinal Electric Head himself. This is going to be fantastic. I'm excited to have this conversation with everyone. Yeah, Nick sends it out and he's all like, should we do this? Are you ready? And can you get here? And I was like, yes, we will make sure we get here, because this is a topic that's fascinating enough, probably at the very heart of a lot of misunderstanding in both the mainframe world and the new agey spiritual nonsensical world. And so for some reason, everybody always wants to tear things apart. And the idea is to put them back together in that sacred marriage. And so I'm very excited. Find me at Magus in the Media, where we break down myth, magic, and the meaning in the stories that you and I love. And I love working with these people right here before you. And let's get it on.
Awesome. I'm so happy you made it, for real. Thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it. And we got my man Jules. What is up, Jules? How are you?
What is going on, man? Thank you guys for inviting me this evening. It's good to see you all again. Everybody, I'm Jules, host of the Greypilledpodcast, the Mississippi Mystic, Handsome Hierophant. Got a lot of names. But this episode, I feel, is very important. There's a lot of misinformation, disinformation out there being put out purposefully, I believe, to kind of give the divine feminine a bad name, a bad look, and a lot of other things that come with it. And, besides finding it in these ancient texts and, some of these ancient mysteries, these, certain kind of archetypes that you see throughout time, you're able to witness it in your own life. Like, I look at my wife, I look at my daughter, I look around me at nature, and you can feel that feminine presence there with you. So I think it's important that everyone notices that and they respect it. But you can find me over at Twitter, on Twitter, X, whatever, at greypilled 3Ds, because my old account got hacked. And then, YouTube, Rumble, Patreon. Over there, go support the show there. We do a lot of things on Patreon. So again, thank you for having me, Nick. It's good to see all you guys.
No, thank you. I appreciate you making it, Jules.
Yeah.
And again, last but not least, we got the Platonic priestess herself. We got Eros. What is going on? How are you?
Good to be here with you guys. Thanks for inviting me. I'm so excited to hear everybody's opinions on this topic, because it's quite complicated. I think there's so much to it. So really excited. You can find me on YouTube at Erosup, or on X at Eros to Ethos. And then I also have a Substack now.
Awesome. Good for you. And thank you very much for making it, Eros. I was really hoping I could get all of you women on for this topic, obviously. So I look forward to all of your input. One thing I did want to add, and I think you kind of just really said it right there, Eros. When it comes to the divine feminine, I think that fits just so many things. It could be archetypes. You see it in art. You see it in pop culture. You see it in tarot. You see it in emblems. It can represent so many different things. It could be a symbol for a whole idea of something. And I even do think in some ways it's even used to show physiology. But I definitely think it is something if you were to sit here and be like, oh, that's satanic, it's like, well, which part? It's such a huge topic that, maybe there is a negative aspect of it, but there's a negative aspect of everything if you push it too far. But I do think it's a very detailed thing to try to sum up right away, to say it is a negative thing, when you could probably spend years really studying it and still not have an idea of what the fuck it really fully is. But hopefully tonight we will get into some of those ideas and some of our experiences with it, or just stuff that we've studied or practiced ourselves. I did want to kind of go around the group and probably, I guess we'll start with Judith. And I kind of wanted to get an idea, I guess, from everybody, what is the divine feminine to them, or how did they incorporate that in their practices, if they did, or to that extent. And Judith, be perfect to ask you, since you're a ceremonial magician as well.
Well, actually, it goes further than that. First, the divine feminine to me is the female energy. If I would put a face or a name to it, it would be Mary Magdalene to me, on how she's been treated through the times. And I grew up Catholic, and she was demonized, which is what we're seeing happen with the divine feminine in the popularity. She's being demonized. There's falsehoods going on. I know a lot of people, we were talking earlier, how there are people still shitting on the whole idea of the divine feminine. But if you look at what they did to Mary Magdalene, there are some people out there who consider them Christians who don't realize that even the Catholic Church admitted prior to even my birth that what they lied on her, called her a whore, said she was possessed by 7 demons, which was not true. And the Catholic Church came out and they admitted that. And now the truth is coming out about her, and there's a revelry. And so to me, she is a divine feminine only because she's an archetype for the divine feminine, because she holds the secrets. If you follow Jesus, if you consider yourself a Jesus follower, she holds the secrets. According to the Gospel of Mary, he told her the secrets that we needed to be conveyed. And to avoid that, and which is what I see happening with that energy, to shut her up, basically, even after she was gone, they said lies, so no one wanted to be her. And I take it personally only because, yes, she is a saint of the Catholic faith, but there's a falsehood that was said about her, and what the secrets that she had to share with the world was squashed due to these lies. And the finding of the Gospel of Mary is where this is coming to fruition. It's always been uneven throughout the ages that women were suppressed when it comes to divinity and everything else. And the divine feminine is the opposite of that. She shows that a woman could stand equally with a male, the masculine energy. There is aspects there that needs to be shared, and that's where I find the divine feminine. She holds a secret. She's the saying, behind every good man is a better woman, or something to that effect. And that's how I go about it. I was Wiccan, and we did a lot of goddess worship, and there's a lot of reverence in the feminine energy, and that's where it goes for me.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that, Judith. It was great. Jen. What is up, Jen? Can you hear
Okay.
me? How do I sound?
Yes, you sound great. You sound great now.
All right, good. Thank you. Appreciate that.
You're welcome. Well, I'm gonna riff off Judith because I think Mary Magdalene, when we did the Aeon of the Daughter spaces, I said that she is the Aeon of the Daughter. Like, she is one archetype, one manifestation of the Aeon, and she is a daughter. She's not a mother. And I think this is a very important, like, because I'm an axialist, so maybe I'll start there. So I'm an axialist. So I believe that, like, the cycles come like Yod He Vav He. It's the father, the mother, the son, and the daughter, and then also the fifth, the secret one, the dragon. That this can be, configured in different ways, but this is the general sort of formulation, I think, of Aeonic thinking that transcends, like, the Typhonian OTO, the OTO, and all in chaos magic. I mean, this is the wheel, we'll say. So I think, Mary Magdalene, she holds the crystal vial. What is in the crystal vial? You can say it's the alchemical wedding. You can say it's the panacea for all infirmities of man. You can say it is the truth. That's one way to understand it. You can say it's the alchemical dew, like what you would collect off of a lady's mantle on a Friday, like on a Venus rising, on a sunrise. You go collect the dew, fresh morning dew from the lady's mantle plant, Alchemia mollia, and you use that for all your alchemy. And of course, you can't mention Mary Magdalene without discussing the Bain Marie. So this obviously did not come from Mary Magdalene, but it comes from Mary of Egypt. As Judith said, Mary Magdalene was conflated with various other desert mothers. So a lot of people know about the desert fathers. There's obviously been a huge resurgence in online orthodoxy. So they'll often talk about desert fathers. But in the Catholic Church, there was actually a movement of desert mothers. So people who would leave society and sort of enter into this kind of pseudo-monastic, but very esoteric. This is a very esoteric kind of Christianity. This is not for the normgroids. And I also think that Mary Magdalene corresponds very, very well. People can absolutely dispute this, but for me, the Kabbalah and the sort of archetypal aeonic concept makes sense. She corresponds very well to the Nuria. So the Nuria is the daughter of Noah sometimes. Sometimes she can be a third daughter of Adam and Eve. There are different configurations in the heterodox sort of Gnostic canon. But the Nuria is said to burn down the ark. This is kind of her story, is that this angel called Eleleth appears before her. He is not one of the archangels. And in fact, he suggests that the archangels, interestingly, as David Rankin sort of alluded to, the archangels can function very much as archons. And sometimes they are treated as that in Gnostic literature. So this angel comes before her and says, listen, the archons, they tell you lies, but everything that they say is a lie, but it's not real. It's only in your mind. So the way to break the spell of the archons is to burn it all down. So this is exactly what she does. She takes a bow and arrow, she lights the arrow on fire, and she sets Noah's Ark on fire because it is said that she finds it in deficiency. Obviously, this is a metaphor, but it's an interesting metaphor because it represents a kind of a destruction by fire. So a lot of Kabbalah, especially the Ramic style, like the Hasidic Kabbalah, is very not obsessed, but it's fixated on the idea of destruction by water. Whereas a lot of Islam and a lot of Sufism and a lot of more esoteric ideas are focused on the destruction by fire. But I think this is an interesting idea in Christianity because it becomes a complementary rather than an oppositional polarity. It is the daughter of fire, meaning the daughter of Deborah, with the son of mercy. So Christ would be coming from Hesed, and she would be coming from Deborah, and they, of course, meet together in Tiferet in the alchemical marriage. So I find this to be a very profound concept. I think other people do too. I don't preference the divine feminine figure, but I have a very strong Dakini practice in Tantric Buddhism. And I always have, and it's always been my strongest practice. Now I have changed, and this has always surprised people that I actually practice a masculine deity, like the last couple of years. But I have always continued to practice the Dakinis because I find them to be very accessible to me. Not everybody finds them as accessible. Some people have to cultivate it. We would just consider that to be a byproduct of karma. Certain people have more predisposition to certain deities and certain practices. So I would say that my relationship fundamentally is very close with the divine feminine, and I also try and cultivate that energy and integrate it in my own practice. So I hope that gives people like a little intro, maybe not that little, but some introduction of where I'm going. Thanks, Nick.
Oh, thank you, Jen. I appreciate that. Magus, I know you were ready from the beginning, so I'll let you go.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, yeah, of course. These things are deeply ingrained into our very nature and being. And so, interesting enough, like what both Jen and Judith have brought up are very important aspects of this principle called the divine feminine. So obvious, of course, we have two different dual principles within all of us. And fascinating enough, through time, I think it's really important we need to define what these things even mean, because the divine feminine as a term, technically, not that it was created by H.P. Blavatsky in the Theosophical Society, but then through time now it's been kind of corrupted even further from her own readings and hijacked by certain institutions, and I think the spiritual tradition is one of them. interesting enough, where all of a sudden you get a complete inversion of this exact thing that we're misrepresenting from like a natural force of energy, the feminine principle, and then it's like it's all of a sudden it gets to be strange, and now we're talking about women as such, when both men and women inherently have this internal principle. Technically, right, the sacred marriage is the balancing of the masculine and the feminine. And I think these things are really important, that when we go through our understanding of reality and what these forces of nature are doing upon us, the yin and the yang of the dualistic system, which is technically not dualistic at all. When we get caught up in either one or the other and not trying to balance them out within ourselves, then I think we get into a hogwash of conversation and forgetting that we're all moving towards the single principle of the sacred marriage in trying to balance these things out through our life. So that's something I think about a lot. And I think about this because I lived in Boulder, Colorado for a long time. I hopped around the hippie scene in my early 20s. I've seen this term be used and abused by the exact people who are trying to think that they're helping it. And I think everyone on this panel has a beautiful, I think they're going to have what I've heard is amazing. And I completely agree, because then this principle gets inverted through time. And what we forget about the divine feminine is one of its manifestations is through the mystery school. So then it only makes complete sense that the exact same thing that exoteric Abrahamic traditions have troubles with is the exact same thing that got put underground by the Inquisition, by every Inquisition, of people trying to control others. And so I think that's these are a lot of different aspects of a massive topic of trying to balance out humans in the world, as we understand that we're going to, as tribal individuals, we're going to basically other things that we don't understand within ourselves. And all of a sudden now look at what it's like through cycles of time, as we've been speaking about already, that we go through crazy things, and we forget that one of the oldest myths of the feminine is that of Inanna entering into the underworld and to confront herself with Ereshkigal, right, her sister. Because Inanna is the higher feminine principle. Ereshkigal is the lower feminine principle. And to go through the 7 gates as she sheds away to become the great mystery herself, which is this topic that we're talking about right now. And so that may sound smattering to some, and others, I don't know how that comes off all the time. But I think it's a really important thing that I've seen, because language is so important that we define our terms. Like, what is the divine feminine principle? And can we all agree upon certain frameworks of when we talk about it? So that's how that's an initial, I don't know.
Thank you. I appreciate that, friend. You made me think of something that I was going to mention earlier. Judith had made me think of a few things, but you reminded me of it again. I just want to get it. Yeah, even when it comes to the divine feminine, sometimes I look at that as like that's kind of like the outcome of the female's hero's journey. Like you're even talking about how you see Inanna go down to the end. Like she's got her own journey, just like a male would in their own story that she's got to go through. That changes, then there's alchemy in that change. Yeah, and we think eventually you get to the divine feminine. But
and I love that. And the idea then, think about the Odyssey, is the masculine adventure of the Iliad, which is Homer's epic, moving through this mythological understanding of what? Of the golden apple of Callisti, of Eros, you know what I mean? Of Eris herself. And then all of a sudden you get the great Trojan War, because who is the fairest of them all? So it's so important that we are continually interweaving masculine and feminine stories and I think that's beautiful, because then the Odyssey is the masculine entering into the feminine. And then it goes back to some people out there who are trying to smear these things, which are fundamental materialists, sheep's and wolves clothing, because we know that they all practice one way or the other. And it's like, you can't get away from the mystical. The divine feminine is so important for all of us. And it's all our birthrights, I think. And I think that's why it's so important.
No, not to keep going on. I'll shut up eventually, Ethan. Let you go. But
sorry, Ethan.
no, just stuff that you were saying. I think it's it's my opinion. I think there's a lot of blinds, or just a lot of things that are covered up when it comes to magic or the occult. So you may not fully understand it or take it, or get a full grasp of the whole picture. Something's missing. And in my opinion, I think you need the male and feminine. It's a story that includes both of them.
Yes.
And her being left out is the whole part of the blind.
Yes.
Maybe
Yes.
next generation will be the male that gets left out. But you know what I'm saying? I just think it just this go around for some reason. It was her that got shit on. You know what I'm saying? And is left out of the equation that I think that she needs to be a part of.
Yeah.
I think it is like if you were to take the DNA and male and female on one side and you were like to untie it or tie it back together, that's the story you're getting. I think kind of in a sense. You need both. So thank you for mentioning that stuff. And just one other thing too that I did want to mention, and I think it's almost considered almost like accepted as fact now, that if you go and look up I forgot the Pope's name, but I find this very interesting. It was homily 33. And if you take Mary Magdalene, MM, and turn that sideways, you get 33 again. But it was homily 33 that he fucked up and considered Mary Magdalene, or whatever, a whore, because he was talking about another woman prior. But like it's considered almost fact now that he screwed that up, and that's not her that he's talking about. It's another woman that he was talking about prior to her in a story. So like I find it interesting how it's like still going with that, but yet I mean most historians and religious people acknowledge the fact that that's a fuck up. But
Yeah, he was talking.
We're still going to run.
Sorry, Nick.
No, go ahead.
He was talking about Mary of Egypt. So you're totally right on that. It's a different saint. It's a different desert mother. So Mary of Egypt was a former prostitute, but if you read her hagiography, she's not even a prostitute. She's like she's kind of like a Bonnie Blue, I guess. Like she just really enjoys crazy encounters, and so her story is that she goes and has relationships with like 100 Roman soldiers on this river barge in Egypt, and then she walks away from the experience, and she has some kind of divine revelation. She takes off all her clothes and she lets her hair grow out, which is like it's abnegation. It's like against vanities. And so some saints will practice this if they've transgressed and done a lot of sins. So she walks out to the desert, and eventually her hair grows so long that she makes it into a hair shirt or a hair dress. So that's how, in her iconography, that's how she's always depicted. So it is an actual saint that they're talking about, and I think that the conflation was actually like deliberate, and I think a lot of people in the church ran with it intentionally. And it's also interesting because if you go to southern France, you will see Mary Magdalene with the MM, like Nick was talking about. They will sometimes have the glyph of Virgo, or sometimes will have the glyph of Aquarius pinned or embroidered on Mary Magdalene's dress. So there's definitely an astrotheological story to this whole thing as well. Sorry, Nick, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, thank you. That's great. That's awesome. All right, Ethan, my man.
This is such a great build, and just to build on what everyone's been saying, there's an expression that I haven't been able to track down its origination, but culture runs downstream of government, government runs downstream of religion. And just to point out that the elimination of the consideration of the feminine, let alone the divinity of the feminine, has been prohibited for thousands of years, beginning with the Asherah polarity, which if you look at it in contrast with Yahweh polarity, we see that a whole consideration of idea is left unconsidered. I think for me, it's important to consider the universal and the personal divine feminine, in a sense that there's kind of the in the four worlds of the Kabbalah, right? There's the most subtle that is the most effective, and from where the material and so on and so forth originate. And there's this aspect of the feminine, right, that is super in touch with the ethereal and the divine, more than masculine. And there's also the personal operative, the healing and motherly and nursing and so on and so forth. For me, the yin yang does depict this hermetic union that Brandon touched on that kind of causes, stimulates, if you will, so much ascension-minded or parallel ideas in accepting what Jung really proposed, this anima and animus, the feminine within the masculine and the masculine within the feminine, and balancing these two and addressing, any cliques or schisms within the acceptance of these kind of natures, I think, is a big part of developing oneself. So I think we can see that it's been kind of eliminated and prohibited, not only in the Western world, but one of the archetypes that I love is the Tara, or the green Tara specifically. And she is a meditative practitioner and is told by her peers that are all men that, essentially, wow, you're really good at meditation. Too bad you weren't a man, for you might be able to ascend in this lifetime. And she continues to do what she does and, becomes this ascended being and proves them all wrong, as one of the iterations of the story goes. So I think of Green Tara as a great kind of embodiment of that energy. But that's about all I wanted to say.
Well, thank you very much, bud. I really appreciate that. Kaiva.
Yeah, this is a great lead up. So for me, I see the divine feminine more as like a force, like the dark potential of all that is. So when I think of masculine, divine masculine, I think of the single pointed focus, the effort, the light. But when I think of the divine feminine, I think of it more as like the dark potential of all that is, which is why perhaps it is looked down upon, because people are afraid. And this is why I think, for me personally, the divine feminine is a subtle force that moves all things, right? It's like women naturally have the ability to tap into the divine feminine for the fact that they are most like the divine feminine, but they are female. Female and feminine are two different things. One's a sex gender, one is it's a nature, right? So when we think of the nature of the divine feminine, we think that both male and female have that nature, but women are more able to tap into it because we have more likeness, just like water is more like earth than it is fire, right? So there's similarities in why women have the ability to tap into that subtle force of energy and use it and channel it more consciously, because it's naturally in our own element. But that doesn't mean that men don't have it. And I think that's what's the problem that we have in our world right now, is I do find that women are also very masculine, right? And they have not embraced their divine feminine, for the fact that we do live in a very single pointed, masculine created world. And I'm not saying that's bad. I think masculine and feminine energy, when in balance, are super essential, because the warrior needs the goddess, and the goddess needs the warrior. So they're both needed. But I definitely think separating the idea, kind of what Brandon said too, like that idea that feminists take the divine feminine and make it their own, right? But then they don't appreciate the divine masculine. And so the question for me is then, so if we can appreciate the divine feminine, because I actually didn't know that Christians don't like the divine feminine. I'm pretty removed from that. So I didn't even know that was a thing that was happening. I've actually only seen the opposite, which is like the new agey, only embracing the divine feminine and really pumping that up, which I think there's a balance, right? Because if you pump it up too much, that you're not appreciating the masculine energy. And I think we all have both forces inside of us. And so it's super essential to not deny a part of yourself. And so, yeah, I think the divine feminine at its core is Tiamat, right? It is the dark potential of all that is. It is the universe. And the masculine force is the light that makes things appear. And yeah, the darkness of all that is scary, right? It's like, when you reach into that abyss, what are you going to pull out? And do you have the ability to hold it and contain it? Women maybe have more of ability to do that. And that's why the divine feminine is more familiar, and there's more, seers and psychics that tend to be women. But yeah, that's kind of what I've contemplated and thought about in my own mind. So thank you.
That was great. Thank you very much. I appreciate that, Kat. Eros. What about you, Eros?
All right, I'm gonna try to be ambitious here. When I think of the divine feminine, I always compare it to its counterpart, right? So I think of the sun and the moon and how, yeah, like Kaiva said, the sun, the masculine, is that structuring light, right? And it reflects off of the moon and comes into form. And so then with like solar and lunar work, you have, because the feminine to me is like matter of the soul and of karma and the subconscious, whereas the masculine is like the ego and the spirit. And so I think much like the sun reflecting off of the moon, I think it was Plutarch that said that the sun reflects off of the moon and then brings things into form. But just like that, you have the subconscious, and basically, the more that you get to know your subconscious, the more that you would build that up into your conscious ego, right? So that's a similar thing where you have the ego, your sun reflecting your moon, your soul, your subconscious patterns, and the feminine is very intuitive and stuff like that. That's why I would say they're more the oracles. They're more the prophetic visionaries, because of the matters of the unconscious and of the soul, where I think all of those patterns are stored. All of the patterns of like how things feel when the planets are in certain configurations and when the moon is in different phases and stuff like that, tapping into that energy, or even just seasons, because the divine feminine, we can't neglect Gaia here. I think that's a huge part of the divine feminine is, bestial nature to a sense, because that is the substrate of which sense and all animal forms and all things of sense are born, is this, physical substrate that does lead to some bestial things. But you also have the moon, which is the regulator of that, right? And so you have hormonal cycles and you have tides and stuff like that. And I guess the last thing I'll mention, well, okay, I have two more things. And so with the moon also, you have memory, right? So Cancer is the historian. The feminine holds on to memory and onto karma. Those belong to the moon. So that's another important divine feminine thing. And then the last would be like meaning making. Women are very relational, and everything is relational. Everything that exists is relational, because you have differences in potential. For anything to have meaning, you have the two things and how they're related to each other. And so they also kind of rule over meaning, which is a big part of Isis, right? She takes the fragments of Osiris and she makes them into a new thing. And as the universe kind of fragments and we get new things and it's expanding, it's the feminine that kind of lives in that liminal space where the new pieces, we find meaning for it.
I like that. They made me think about our wings for some reason. The symbolism of our wings, a bunch of feathers coming together to become part of one thing. Thank you, Jules. What is up? What's going on? You are muted, sir.
Yeah, of course I
There
am.
you go.
Yeah, man. So what everyone just said, I think everyone's spot on, especially with the moon, because in northern mythologies, you know, you have the moon god, Mani or Mani, who manages basically the moon, but then the energy, the personification of night is not, right? Or Nuit. So this is the energy, just like the sun goddess, Suna or Sol, you know, Balder is that personification of their energy. So it's like you have to have, if you're going to have the masculine, you have to have the feminine. If not, it's out of natural order. And I don't believe it's of what someone would call God, or, we come from a woman. We live on a planet that is feminine. You know, and our job, and this is another archetype that has been hijacked besides the divine feminine, is the green man archetype, being the masculine form of nature, right? And spreading the seed throughout nature to make it blossom and bloom. And, this does go all the way back, and Isis being the mother of the mysteries. And, there's some myths that she buried Osiris in an oak tree. Some gods of the morning wood lore there. But, it goes, and I'll speak on some northern mythology. I think Kaiva was talking about, there is that dark aspect to it that people like to demonize. You have the Morrigan and Hela and a lot of other goddesses that embody this, but then you also have the opposite, right? Freya, you have the Valkyries, you have, even in the sagas, Brunhild is this embodiment of the divine feminine manifested to man, right? She's there so like the king's line can go on from, and this is all from certain sagas, right? So, but I'll come back to saying that, this is something that I think is important that most people understand is necessary. This is something that you can't just write off. You can't just go, oh, well, I don't want to mess with the divine feminine, so I'm going to push it over there. It's kind of like the lower and higher self as well. People want to kind of try to cut their lower nature off. And it's like, bro, it's always going to be there. You have to learn how to, walk with it and how to have a balance, right? And that's what it's all about, is a balance. So, yeah, man, I think there's a lot of misconceptions nowadays concerning feminine archetypes and the roles of these goddesses in these stories. Well, the gods and goddesses, right? They're all looked at as these fallen deities, and like, yeah, they all have a fallen nature to them, just like we do, but they also have this divine nature as well that we should strive for that, right? That's the inspiration right there. But yeah, all the things you guys said are spot on. I can't disagree with any of it.
That was great, Jules. Thank you. Appreciate that. I mean, I guess, for myself, I really don't have all that much to say like everybody else did. I guess when I look at like a divine feminine, or just the word divine, I automatically think, I guess, otherworldly or not in the flesh. So I automatically, I guess, take it to like, the more higher divinity, pretty much to the point to, I guess, it'd be dark matter or magnetism. If you really want to get down to like, when does creation really start in the feminine aspect, I would look at it as like probably something along those lines, going that high up, I guess, in the creation scale. But even like thought forms and stuff, starting to put those into form, sound of music, something even along those lines, like when you start taking, I guess, like if you you could ring one note and let it go. And I guess that would be, sound of music. But like when you start having the pauses in there and the different notes and all that stuff, that is really putting vibration into some sort of structured form. So I would even look at it as something like that, even taking like lighter sound and putting it into form. But I appreciate all these different points of views. I think those are all great. It was actually great to hear all of them from you. Give me an idea of what guys actually even really think about. So it was pretty cool. I was, it was a topic that we seem to be, I guess, some of us have brought back up. And I think it is quite obvious the divine feminine, or even I guess the idea, if some sort of idea like that, can be looked at as a very negative reason. I do understand that, we had mentioned earlier, you could take the Morrigan or other people, Kali. They could be looked at as, not that positive. But I mean, I guess maybe because of the way I look at it, chaos, regardless, is going to happen when you change something. Regardless if there's a change, like if I stop smoking Newports and go to Marlboro, that's chaos. Technically, doesn't mean somebody actually got killed. Holly didn't have to kill anybody, but she might have been representative in that decision to make that change.
That's another
something as
goddess
silly
right
as that, So, my heart, as crazy as this sounds, I think my heart deciding to pump one way and go the other way. It's never doing the same thing at once. It's just in constant chaos. Well, that chaos I need, or I stop fucking breathing. My lungs blowing out one way and then deciding to suck in and not continue blowing, which you can't do. That is chaos. It is switching up. It might sound a little crazy, but I do even think, stuff like that. So you do need that, I think, in some ways. I actually think our body is in constant chaos. There's cells being created and dying at the same time. I mean, just existence, I think, is chaos. But so I even in that sense, what I'm trying to get at as I'm babbling is that I don't think automatically is always negative. There's just a way of depicting something changing. But I guess what I also wanted, was finally getting to, I guess the whole demonization thing about it. I understand it's gone on in the past, and it seems like maybe with the satanic panic era now. I also know that it is profitable to come out and say that you're a Christian podcaster nowadays in the conspiracy community. So you may get a lot of people that just want to make clickbait shit and point at demons all day. So it may be a topic that you'll end up covering, because somebody else that did it a few weeks ago seemed to get some clicks too. But I just don't understand. Where do you think, I guess maybe it's still a carryover from the churches or organized religion, but where do you think maybe it all went wrong with the whole demonizing this aspect of occultism that, in my opinion, I think we all have said here, that if you are, this is just my theory, if you are have half a fucking clue on what you're doing, you're going to acknowledge both. So then why is it something that's not in other things?
I think it's hiding the mysteries, like how the mysteries even went underground. Because I think, like what I said, it's when you're reaching into the abyss, right? That's scary, right? And I think so many people like their regimen, the regiment day, where it's A, B, C, D, E, and I'm just going to do that over and over and over again. But to really live in that intuitive flow of life and trust and faith, I think is something that it goes against in a way. And I have nothing against Christianity or any church things, but maybe it goes against the church in that way, where it's no, you must come to us to receive your divinity, or to receive your confidence, or to receive your, something along those lines. Because I think there is something along that, where people that tend to be okay with the divine feminine, I think, are ones that are okay to just flow in life and to have faith and trust, and to know that they are doing exactly what they need to do, and they don't have to question everything. As in, you don't have to have everything figured out before you move to point A, if that makes sense.
I just want to respond really quick to both what Kaiva and Eros said at the beginning, because I thought that was great, but then also what Nick said. I'm not saying I'm the Kali expert on the panel. I definitely would never characterize myself as that, but I do know a lot about Tantra. So what Nick said was 100% accurate in my opinion about who Kali is. When Kali appears as a Dakini, so this is not how people understand her on Twitter. This is not how normative Indians, what quote unquote Hindus, which is not even a real thing, by the way, when Kali appears as a Dakini, meaning she is dancing on the Smashana, dancing on the carnal ground, dancing on the corpse of Shiva, her singular meaning is the destruction of time. So every time your heart beats, every time a cell dies, every time Nick burns a little bit of the cigarette, that is Kali. That's the destruction of time right there.
So
now, sorry.
Jen, I was going to ask, so would Shiva be like considered the same as Saturn in that kind of respect, as time, like she's trampling on time?
So when Shiva is a corpse, so when Shiva is Shava, he is the mind. Okay? He is not awoken. He does not become Mahakala. He does not become greater time unless she steps on him. So the mind, so one way to think of it is the mind, the sleeping mind has to die or be destroyed or move through time before he can awaken, which is also a metaphor for the Upasaka. So the person performing the mantra for Kali, they also are Bhairava, or they also are Mahakala in one way of thinking, which is Shiva, but it's not really Shiva. Shiva really is just the mind. It's the perceiving mind of all creation, but he can't perceive because he's asleep. So when she steps on him, then he comes into being. And so this is another interesting thing. In Tantra, the feminine force is always considered to be the force of God. It's always a complement. So in Buddhism, we extend this out, obviously Tantric Buddhism, to be the breath, the prana paramita, the perfection of wisdom. This is also can mean the breath. So when God is breathing and he's in like his meditative state, so take Shiva, for example, that's just an example. Yes, he does exist in Buddhism, but it's understood more ontologically. He's not a god like Nick was talking about. It's not like a deity. It's not like a deity sitting in heaven. It's a higher force. It's a higher principle. So when he is doing his meditation, every time he is inhaling and exhaling, the Shakti, his wife, takes immanence in the world. Now, this is a more Indian tantric thing. This is not necessarily a Buddhist tantric way to understand their configuration, but it can be. So it's a really good way to explain to people that Shiva is really God. He's like an Ein Sof Or. Like he's way out of our timeline, our like existence continuum, whatever it is. And in Tantra, it is the feminine divine force that falls, just like the Gnostic story. It's exactly the same. Even in Buddhism, the original Buddha and his consort are in the cave with turquoise walls and lapis lazuli and the sand made of diamonds. And she looks outside the cave at the flashing light, which is the sun, and she falls down because she hears the cries, just like Ethan was talking about with Green Tara. You can also say it's Green Tara. She hears the cries of humanity. She hears the cries of samsara. So she temporarily stops. You could say that they stop breathing. She turns over her left shoulder, looks out the cave, and she falls all the way down, just like the Gnostic story, again, like through the pleroma. So then she has to re-arise. So when she falls onto earth, she doesn't remember her name, just like Sophia. But she also becomes the birthing grandmother, the Barbello, this kind of Tiamat. That's one way to describe it.
Very similar to Ninmah in the Sumerian stories, dude. Like when Enlil, the sky god, decided in the ancient flood myth to flood the earth, she wept for humanity. And then she came back as this kind of grandmother figure, this you could say crone archetype, right? That lived in the mountains. And then she was known as Ninhursag. And so.
No, you're right, Jules. Like, look, this is my proposition. I personally believe that Vajrayana Buddhism, in particular, is the continuation of the story. But instead of looking at it as a cosmology, meaning that the deities are real, it looks at it, Buddhism looks at the multiverse as an ontology, meaning that the deities exist at stages of consciousness. So when she is at the ferocious grandmother who has given birth to the blood ocean, given birth to the world of samsara, she is not the same consciousness as when she is depicted as a higher Buddha, as when she is Green Tara. Green Tara knows who she is. Green Tara knows her own name, and Green Tara also recognizes her own potential. And this is even part of her, how it's explained in even outer, very exoteric Tantra. She is Lambodara, pregnant. She is pregnant with potential, meaning pregnant to give birth to the waters of the world. She can restart, she can revive, and she can also rectify the three worlds. That's how it's understood. With her tears or with her pregnant waters, whatever you want to describe it as. So she becomes like an axial figure, in particular Tara. And so I think Tara, which just means star, is actually related to Ishtar, Inanna, all of them, but it's just understood differently. And really, no tantric who's hearing this, like tantric Buddhist who's hearing me say this, would really find this crazy, because a lot of Tibetans also believe this. Like, they just look at it as a axial story, that the story is always continuing. The more information that we get about exactly, the more information. And green is the color of air. Green is also related to Jupiter. Green is also related to, you could say, the liberation. It's not the liberation from samsara necessarily, but it's the 4 elements. Like, when I think all of us were on the David Rankin episode, but he was talking about elemental configurations. So air in Tantra is the 3 in 1. It is fire, earth, and water all together. And through that creates green and air. So like the Northern Lights, that's a great, I think Kaiba and I even spoke about this on her episode on Threshold Saints, but you can liken it to the Northern Lights. If you've ever seen a picture of the Northern Lights, they're green and it expands into the air and it's surrounded by a pink halo. So this is really important in terms of like aeonic thinking, green and pink, where we're going, what elements are really important in terms of green and pink. It's fire and air. So again, I believe that there is an interrelationship between what we're calling magic, what we're calling this like primordial religion, and also what I would call the Kabbalistic tree. I think it's all interrelated, and I would say Tara is at Hesed. And I've said this many times, Jules. I'm not just like saying it for for you or for you guys or the episode here. I've said it many times. So this is my proposition. People don't have to agree, but for me, it makes a lot of sense. Sorry, I didn't mean to go on for that long.
No, you're great. I completely agree. Yeah. And that's something that people see with Callie. They only see that depiction of her with her arms and her tongue out, and like, it's something that's used again, like what we were talking about earlier, for this misconception of the divine feminine as this evil archetype that they will literally LARP with, like left-wing feminism and all this stuff. And it's just like, dude, it's the total opposite, like energy. It completely, like, if you experience, women, I'm sure, the ladies on this show, women like my wife, if you experience, like an IRL interaction with them, like you feel it. It's something, it is something divine. So.
Nice. Yeah, I agree. And I think that's really important for us all to understand I have 2 concepts I want to throw out there. One is something that Jin lightly covered. And this other one is, we could think about what happened in the Inquisition in Rome, right? And I think this is really important to understand time frames and how these topics come and go through time, this mythology. That's why I think it's really important to see it through the mythopoetic lens, is because then we can kind of detach it and kind of see it through this nice little story. And so with the Gnostics, and that's why it's so important to think about it through this Western esoteric lens as well, is the Pista Sophia, the idea of Sophia falling. Jin talked about it. But through this lens, then you're seeing Sophia fall into the material world. Why? Well, because she saw her own, maybe not even her own, there was like a reflection, and it was this beautiful thing. And so she fell. Falling away from what? She was an aeon, and being an aeon, it's not like we normally think about it, right? And so it's the idea is that the aeon of Sophia, as she falls into matter, and what she was connected to was the logos, the Christos. The Christos and Sophia merging create a beautiful world. But without that, you get just Sophia fallen. This is pre-Eve. This is pre the world coming into being, because in that one we get Jehovah and Yahweh, these different figures, and these stories representing how you see concepts and forces through time, and then interopolate that to what happened during the Inquisition and with Rome. And so the mystery schools are the underpinning of this entire thing, I think. And I think it's really important to understand that the mystery school's point is to bring a single individual into the thing that needs to balance them out the most so they can completely become human, and that is the sacred marriage. So how do you control entire civilizations? Nietzsche says that there's this master-slave mentality. And what happens if you take these mystery schools and say, only we are the ones and you cannot have direct gnosis of the divine? Because the divine is the purpose of why we're doing this in the first place. And so if we merge the divine realms, the Malkuth, the kingdom of all the 10 Sephiroths, into the Malkuth of the kingdom that we're in right now, Kether here, because they're in each other, Malkuth is in Kether and Kether's in Malkuth, merge the Christos with the Logos, that's when we can have that sacred marriage. That's what the point of what we're doing. But if you can get people to not want that and understand that we are going to have a Hegelian dialectic where we create a schism of these two energies that are exactly the thing that radiates, attracts, and repels, right? Go back to what you were saying, Nick. Very important. The electromagnetic spectrum of the human body as it radiates into the embodied act and realm. Electricity, masculine. Magnetism, feminine. Not male, not female, not gendered. But there are certain expressions of how our organs and hormonal structures and systems move throughout the world in what you are here embodied in. And so what we're doing is with this aura of our experience moving through the world, you and I and everyone here on this entire planet are not victims, even though we may get burnt at the stake like them. But the idea of the Christos unification with Sophia, which is exactly what they're trying to pull away, the human, the suprahuman, the Ubermensch, right? That's everyone. If you can take this one thing and say, now you have to fight this, and now neither of the divine feminine or the divine masculine are in their fullest, and now they've fallen. And what are we trying to do? Pick ourselves back up again. And I think this is a really important concept that we move through, is because this is within our very mythology, the collective unconscious, which stems forth into the actualized realms. And so if we ask why are there idiots on the internet who post videos about complete fucking nonsense, yep, and say things about Satanism and interpolating it with the divine feminine when the divine masculine is also Satanized, as in become an adversary towards what the egoic agenda of, go back to the story of what did Sophia create in the Pistis Sophia in the creation story. She created her son popping out of her, comes up Samael, right? You get Jehovah himself thinking and seeing no one because his mother was on a different realm. She's an aeon fallen. And so what happens there is that he sees nothing and he says, you shall have no other God before me. You shall worship me and I shall create you, creating Adam and Eve. And this plight of existence itself, just being here. And so that's kind of, there's this thing going on. And I'm just like, let's go. That's like if we are going to battle the great archons, which are just another stepping stone of our own enlightenment, what Terence McKenna say? We are a planet giving birth, right? Culture is not your friend. Whatever that is that's pushing out there, feminism, the patriarchal red pill nonsense, like all of these are but mere shadows on a wall. That's how it's like, that's how I feel, right? Because it's important. What do you do in Tai Chi? You balance the divine masculine and the divine feminine continually in this energy ball, right?
Yeah, I think fear has a lot to do with like why the divine feminine is pushed down. I think it is so powerful because it is the chaos, right? It is the dark abyss of all that is. And if anybody wields the power of the divine feminine, what does that mean? You know, and also in another sense too, when we look at like, we look at the past, right? Like the golden age when supposedly there was kings who were actually connected to like the divine power and actually ruled with a conscious and moral existence. You know what I mean? When we think of like when they were taken down by the ones that had no moral compass or had no connection or, you know, I don't know. I think there is something to be said. If you look at our world right now, it is ruled by psychopaths who like clearly have no connection to divine. They may say they do, but I guarantee they don't. So it makes me wonder if there was a time in the past where these psychopaths actually slaughtered the ones that actually were connected to more of that divine feminine power, and were able to like pull these sacred, amazing buildings and just energies and like create a planet that was harmonious. And then these, I don't know, it's just like an idea, like where these psychopaths just all of a sudden like killed out these people and then got in power, and all of a sudden nobody has the ability to wield this divine feminine power, because it does have the ability to make things, create things, and really change the course of the world, right? So just kind of a thought. I don't know what you guys think about that.
They killed off all our poets. They killed off all our scribes, the druids, all of the mystery schools, all of the, the Christian mystery schools. They eliminated all them too. So they could control this narrative. And now you kind of see the product of that,
I'm going to take a little bit of an adversarial position to all of you, and maybe not all of you, but in terms of this framing, because in terms of like Asia and like Tantra and like Taoism, the divine feminine never went away. It never went underground. It was never really, wasn't it? So okay, so Nick, I put in the private chat an image of Kali if you want to bring. Yeah, thank you.
I got you.
Okay, cool. So basically, Kali is a transgressive figure because she's antinomian to the Brahminical order. That's kind of how Tantra gets framed in the West, but that's not really what Tantra even is, and we won't get into that necessarily. But she is transgressive against the order, but she's also part of the first order. Like she is the Aeon of the Mother, if you want to call it that. She is Binah at her most destructive, at her most revelatory as well. So you can see Shiva is praying to her. Shiva is subordinated to her. She is standing on the jackal. The jackal is outside of normative civilization. It's a transgressive animal. It's an outcast animal. It eats the dead bodies on the carnal ground. So the mind takes refuge in the destruction of time, because only through apocalypse can there be revelation. Interestingly, she is not the goddess of chaos. I know some people will say that she is, but she is actually not. The goddess of chaos is represented by that older grandmother figure, as I mentioned, and as Jules mentioned, I think all other people have said. That's a different name. Names in Tantra mean it's hugely important. So if you say Kali is chaos, no, Kali is is when all things coalesce into like a black hole almost, and then are like sort of caught in the event horizon. So they almost can't escape, but they're also moving through the destruction of time. Worshipping Kali means that your karma is going to be very horrible for your lifetime. That's really what it means. But it also means that you move through the karmic densities very quickly. So maybe in one lifetime, by doing Kali Tantra, you will move through all of your negative karmas from your past life very, very quickly. It's like a higher octave of Saturn or Binah, however you want to understand that.
Is that a giant like piece of mycelium in the back? Is that a giant mushroom?
Or it's a UFO, it's UAP.
I was going to say it's like a bell, maybe, or it's all the same shape.
Yeah, it's a bell. That's how you can understand. So in temple worship, these are always installed above the Shakti. And usually they have a yantra with 64 triangles within it's like the Dharmadaya. It's like what people call the Star of Remphan. We were talking about another podcast,
which is just a union of the divine feminine and masculine.
Correct.
You're talking about Star of David. Yeah, that's exactly.
It's not the Star of David. It's the Dharmadaya.
Yeah. Names are names. Yeah.
Right. So Kali is but one order. So I think the divine feminine takes on different roles. Like she takes on this transgressive, anti-Brahminical, anti-Vedic, sort of normative Puranic Hinduism. She takes on this like sorcerer's path, but she's only one goddess, and there are 64 goddesses, just like 64 angles in the yantra. So the sort of focus gets placed on the dark goddesses, but it's really interesting because in Tantra, she is the prime mover, meaning that the destruction of time is what moves time along, but she is not first cause. First cause is actually green Tara. The perception of the worlds, Hasidic, like looking at yourself in the great ocean of samsara, recognizing who you are, that true perception that happens, that is what the first or that is what the first cause. That's first cause of how the world becomes
How is
created and
that? How is
destroyed.
that different than what we were talking about? I'd love just so people can understand the
Well, I
connection
don't
to
agree
Kali.
with your well, I don't agree with your Kabbalah number one, Brandon, but that's another totally other issue. It's but secondly, it's different because I don't think that the divine feminine went underground, in at least in the Asian sort of like the Eastern thought. I think that it when you have a predominance of certain transgressive forms of worship, like say Kali or say Durga, which is the more normative Hinduism version, it's blood sacrifice. It is a lot more tribalistic. It's a lot more ethnocentric, and it's a lot more oriented to the village and to the region. It is not necessarily made for the world in 2026 when we have social media, because people tend to go tribalistic. They tend to believe that their subgroup is elevated or oppressed, which are both just, those are just dialectics of the same thing, whether you take the ethno-narcissistic position or the subaltern position. So what I'm saying,
Yeah,
Brandon,
I wasn't necessarily saying that maybe in the East it disappeared. I just think it's an interesting concept to think about how when you
absolutely.
had all these cultures, I mean, let's just talk about Japan though. I mean, they have an emperor who is like the Sun King. You know what I mean? So I mean, if we're going to talk about divine feminine in like the East, we can't ignore Japan, China, all these places that didn't necessarily have a divine feminine that was totally represented, did they?
I mean, so you're even in your own example, Kaiva, the sun goddess is a goddess, and she's Amaterasu, and that is the divine ancestor of the Japanese royal family. So they're
Right.
claiming matrilineal descent from a goddess, not a god. So it's very different than like the UK and the English sort
Mm-hmm.
of divine lineage, right? And then in China, you do have these, like the divine feminine is Guanyin is probably the most important Chinese Mahayana goddess, who is also likened to Tara. Like they're equivalent figures. They may not be exactly the same, but they're equivalent.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm just saying is that you have different countries running on different time scales, different
Right.
civilizational models. You are in different aeons, perhaps, just speculatively. And
I
so,
would say just for me to butt in real quick, I would say I do think the demonization is just coming highly from the Abrahamic religions. I mean, we could just maybe all wrap it up and get to that. I think we could all agree on that, probably.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say so for sure.
Yeah. Which is, well, yeah, because I understand even like what Jim was saying. Something that I've even covered in I think it was either in the eclipse or the moon kings. There are some beliefs where the moon is male and the sun is female. So, I could see what I do see what he's getting at too. That even in other belief systems, I mean, the female is kind of or just as venerated, if not higher, than male. And I do think it is just highly though coming from the Abrahamic religions that is seriously shitting on the divine feminine. One thing I have thought about, and this was an idea that I wanted to kick around, and I have to say I do owe this to Danielle Lane when we had her on Brandon recently. She had brought something up that I ended up looking into, and I'm actually editing it now as like an episode that I did. She sent me down a rabbit hole right after that show. The whole idea of the Virgin Mary, that actually is not an original idea from Christianity. And if you look even at her story, when I started looking at her story, Joseph was basically that chick's handler because she wanted to go into a situation to where you were going to choose not to have sex, not to get into a relationship, and learn religion. And he was supposed to be there to make sure all this shit went okay. He actually was, they were put together.
Where did you read that?
I could send you the books.
Yeah, I would love to. Yeah, I would love to. Like, who's like interpreting the story that way? Because that's a fascinating interpretation.
And she did this. Now, this is where I want to go, though. When you look at all these other cultures, a lot of cultures would look at the Virgin, there were so many other cultures that celebrated the Virgin. The reason they were celebrating the Virgin is because they knew at some point your body's just going to change. You're going to have sex or you're going to get into a relationship and your life is just going to change. That's going to be a changing point in your life that just happens. And you're not going to be the same person anymore. Mary chose not to do that. That's really the only difference. That's like the difference in these stories, is that's the slight difference. But yet, if you start to even want to go back and look at exactly what the word virgin even meant, that does not mean that Mary was not getting laid. I'm just going to keep it real. It just means that she wasn't married. It had nothing to do with sex. So I think this whole misunderstanding, and I do think that the fact that you have, because in my opinion, it is Catholics, but mainly Christians, with the satanic panic and the stuff with the divine. I often wonder, is it their little tweak to the original idea of the Virgin and the celebration of it and this and that, of her choosing to be abstinent now? Like now it's just like you have to be totally abstinent of sex. Or, you can't be a chick that likes to fuck. You can't show sexualism.
Well, they push that with OnlyFans, right? So it's like over sexualized.
Yeah, no, I feel like it's like unless you wear a chastity belt as a female figure, you're satanic.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, right. I mean, the idea of over literalizing things, right?
One either.
I needed a chastity belt when I was a young man. I'll take that.
Either.
Sorry, guys.
It's hilarious. I think there's another. I mean, it goes back to the whole thing of like mistaking esoteric symbolism and allegory for fact, that she was actually a virgin or she was of pure and chasted state to have to give birth to the Christos, right? It's a similar thing, Krishna, and like there's so many different.
She went and studied and shit. She was.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, being a high priestess. Some say that she was the daughter of David, of the Davidic line itself. That's another interpretation of Mary giving birth to Christ, and why he would be of divine orientation. Fascinating enough.
But I've often covering that. I just feel like when you take the women and then add sexuality to it, that is a huge part of like the whole fear of men. Like I was saying earlier, joking around, I'm just going to keep it real. There's a lot of men out there that are afraid of women that have half a fucking brain and aren't going to be your fucking bitch. And some dudes are just afraid of pussy in general. Let's just keep it real. So it's like you just have a thing against
groypers. Is that what?
Oh, yeah. They're just mad gay men.
Well, you can think of it, Nick, in a Kabbalistic way, is that the church tried to marry the sort of Platonic Trinity, like the idea of the Platonic Trinity, and they tried to fit the characters into Yod He Vav He, skipping the daughter. So they had to make Mary, who is both a mother and a daughter, so Bina Malkuth connection. They put those archetypes into one figure. Now this definitely is not necessarily incorrect from like a Kabbalistic perspective. Like it actually makes sense to me why you would do it. Like there's a logic to it. I'm not saying I agree with it. I don't agree with it, but I'm just saying I do understand it. So if you're interested in like the paradox of numbers and your 3 is sort of like your base form, I mean, like Eros will have a lot more to say about this than me. Like I know nothing about this. I can just talk about it from Kabbalah and from Buddhism. Like that's it. But I'm just saying that I do understand like where they were coming from it. I just think that it creates like a duality, which is that, and Kabbalah does this too. It reinforces the idea of the mother at Bina and the maiden at Malkuth. But I actually, in my own experiences with the Sephirah, that is just not the case. I believe that all the Sephirah have both a masculine and a feminine polarity. I don't think it's just I think the Sephirah are largely a negative space. I think they are more like self-combusting stars rather than like how people conceptualize them as more dense, like more planetary. I actually think the planets, as I've said many times, are the outer density or the matter or the klipa, which is not necessarily bad. And I don't even think that I think what gender we ascribe to the klipa doesn't actually really matter. because I think that the true core is non-dual. It's like that diamond thunder, that lightning layer is in the 5th density. And that is what matters, which is non-dual. So it doesn't even really matter like the natures we ascribe. It's more the archetypes or the kinds of ways we recognize the iconography as we travel through the experience. That's just my opinion.
Thank you very much, Jim. Anybody else have anything they wanted to add?
Well, actually, I have a question for Jen. Off of what you just said. So if we look at it as the archetype in that viewpoint, that means the pushback on the divine feminine and this demonization of it is basically, it's an archetype that the majority is just unwilling to accept at this point then.
She has to take on the role of the adversary in certain aeons, if you want to think of it very axially. Like if we are moving in an aeonic cycle and there are certain 3 aeons, this is a more Gnostic conceptualization, but I like it. It goes with the OTO stuff that you and I have discussed before, Judith, a lot, in my opinion. So if you say 3 aeons arise in every yuga or cycle, and whenever the wheel turns, which the wheel is always turning, but we'll say that it can be demarcated into at least 4 different quadrants, just like a swastika. So the mother will take on the adversarial role in certain kinds of whenever the aeon is the oppositional to her. So in the aeon of the father, the mother is going to take on either a complementary or an adversarial role. And in the aeon of the mother, the father and the son can both take on both complementary and adversarial roles, like Brandon mentioned. But so you expect to see these archetypes become like either Luciferic, satanic, meaning adversarial to the mainstream religion. Like it's just like we're just talking about like switching subculture and culture. Like what is the underground current and what is the above ground current? So right now we have largely in the West Abrahamic religions, which I have to say, for me, I never felt oppressed by Christianity. I never felt oppressed by Catholicism, but I do see a lot of the Saturnian sort of slowness of like being born Catholic and going through the church. Like you are basically never going to get there, like to deeper metaphysical experiences just by relying on the outer temple religion. But there are ways to do it, and it's clear from the saint hagiographies that saints were able to do it. Just like the monastics did a lot of demonic and goetic and angelic summoning. There are ways to do it. It's just that it's not considered to be a part of the, acceptable culture. So what I'm saying is that the aeons switch. They will take on positions that are contrary to the order of the laws of nature, to quote the, Keys of Solomon. So I don't know if that answers your question, Judith, but I just think that, that when the aeon of the mother is demonized, then there will be people that are attracted to the nature of that transgression. And when she is, there have been cycles, there like India, they always had a goddess cult. That's like very well known in archaeology. When they have a goddess cult, they tend to go into more low consciousness. Like, I'm going to sacrifice a goat to get this A thing. So it's like, then it like perpetuates, because how do you then sort of contain that ferocious energy? Because it's like Eros was saying, in Tantra, even your offering is relational. What you give, how you give it, your state of consciousness when you give it, that is what activates the quote unquote deity. So if you are giving her ferocious offerings in a ferocious way, she's going to come back 10 times stronger and be like, you need to up the ante. I need more. So that's the problem with Aeon of the Mother. She always desires more. And I think this is also what Crowley was talking about, but I think that he also got caught up in like the polarity of father-mother. This is just my opinion. But I think that this is why he was like Aeon of the Sun, because he was like, we need to break out of this kind of extremes of the polarity and move into this new aeon, but he was against like this, whatever, for whatever reason, he did not like Frater Chad's Aeon of the Daughter work. But I think it was really complementary to his, and I think that that's why he didn't like it, because he saw himself as the great beast in opposition to, all that is good or all worldly religions or whatever. He was like he was proto-punk, you could say, or proto-rock star. And so he didn't want the Tiferatic like balance, the harmonious sort of nature of it. So this is just my opinion, obviously, but this is just, I think that it goes to like what you were asking. Like, why do we see certain things demonized? And I think she likes the role. Like, if you were going to anthropomorphize the feminine divine force, I think sometimes in certain aeons, she actually likes being the transgressive adversarial figure. I think it suits her, especially in like the quote unquote feminist dark goddess worship. I think that those forms suit people who are going to be transgressive, who are going to, want antinomy and ritual.
I was thinking about something we mentioned before the show about how the arise of this whole idea of witches was really due to this kind of monotheistic demonization of women. And actually, historically, I believe a lot of these were found to these cases where women healers were chastised and punished. They were just midwives and herbal healers that were deduced to be, some kind of dark feminine powers that, because they were able to take care of people that normally suffered and died. And the whole idea of repression of that came from, or really the idea that all this had to go underground came from this repression. And further recently, the idea that we have this allopathic medicine industry that totally eliminated even the consideration of herbs and even nutrition to where it's all allopathy, poison, drug, cut. And some of it is helpful in certain cases, but the fact that they really created it to eliminate the herbal healing that women were often associated with is, evident and kind of depicts how through the centuries, even to our own detriment, collectively, we've been trying to be rid of empowered women and the feminine.
Yeah, I agree with that. And it's also like if you look at just I always like to think of it like the devil is present at all times, right? And what better way to cage people than to separate their identity, right? Than to convince them, because it does just come down to people are just convincing other people, right? Like the whole medicine thing, like, oh, they're all witches, let's all kill them. So it's kind of just wild that the sovereignty of so many people was taken because they were unwilling to follow their intuition, which is that divine feminine force, right? So instead of following their intuition and being like, wait a second, that woman saved my life with that medicine, instead they're like, no, that dude and that other person say that they're the witch and we should just off with their head, right? So it's like this convincing of people to go against their own sovereignty is such a wild concept that it does show you like the suppression of the divine feminine, just letting it be the intuition, right? The intuitive power to like question, why would we do that? First off, why would we kill anybody just because they're like, have we seen evidence of their bad doings, or are we just going to take the advice of this person, right? So yeah, it is very interesting, the convincing and all of that. So I'm glad you brought that up, Ethan.
I wanted to say something really quick. Back to Nick's question about like the demonization of women sexually. I just think that that's another Abrahamic thing, but not necessarily even, because a big part of spirituality, right, is virtue and like connecting to virtue to like, grab hold of your will and I would say Plotinus was definitely influential in that. Like, he was very anti your bestial nature. And so then if we're demonizing the bestial nature and like human nature, then historically women, I guess I would say, are more the objects of desire, right? Because we're physically different, and I think that men are more sexually focused perhaps than women, or less sexually guarded than women. And so there's always that kind of unevenness where men are seeking it more than women are. And so women just tend to be the object of desire more. And then there's this huge like social imbalance that is like pretty significant that could be talked about. But so I think that a big part of that demonization of women and women sexually is just because they are like the objects of desire and the sexual gateway, I guess. And so I think it would make sense that you could kind of over time go into that where you start demonizing the object of desire and trying to kind of contain that for the purpose of virtue and stuff.
It's interesting that you're mentioning, I guess, like Platonism with the Platonists. It was something that I just noticed. It wasn't all of them, but it was a decent chunk. It was a few of them. But like at some point, when I was covering like I guess Christianity, there was a couple of people like Justin Martyr, Eusebius, Origen, a handful of people that were like the big mouths, basically telling everybody else how this Christianity was supposed to go. And a good handful of them were Platonists. And the reason they were running their mouths was because of the Gnostics. And we know the Platonists don't like Gnosticism. So I even wonder, like, if even the insertion of as much as I'm a fan of Platonism, the insertion of Platonism has even something to do with shaping that type of idea.
Well, I think Plotinus was a huge turning point for that. I don't know, maybe not, but I think at least in my reading, I've never seen anyone as like anti bestial form as Plotinus was. And I kind of always felt like St. Augustine and a lot of the Christian doctrine probably took some of that puritanical kind of thought and kind of incorporated that more into Christianity. I can't be sure, but
yeah, think about it. We have just to separate Platonism from Plato, right? That's a really important understanding. And then Platonists are just people who are now have learned at the academy and taken Plato's work and added a lot of ways to talk about it. Is they added a theology. Plato didn't have a theology. And so he was proposing through all these dialogues with Socrates. And then all of a sudden you get people like Eros is talking about, like, and you too, Nick, Plotinus and Proclus and all the way up to Iamblichus. And so you get all these different Platonists having all these different ideas of what theology means. And then, as you're saying, St. Augustine and all these characters also taking from Aristotle, who's also a Platonist, and then integrating these interesting aspects of what Plato was trying to get at when he says that we must use the higher mind of reason to understand that your lower desires and the animal forms, they have the ability to be harmonized. You don't want them to go away because we got to still eat, sleep, fucking, and procreate, right? But at the same time, you can't separate them. But the reason, the higher mind, is there to make sure we know and have virtue, like Eros was talking about, fortitude, prudence.
Keep the lower self in check.
And it keeps it in check. Thank you, Jules, as always. And it's this idea of, like, if we can structure us this way, is one model, right, of just trying to understand whatever the Orphic traditions were teaching us, Pythagorean traditions, all the way back to Sumer. And this descent of Inanna into the underworld. As these stories with the Orpheus and the egg and these things come through into now, you get the Inquisition in this time frame. After you get all of this plethora of the Hellenized world taking all these different cultures and smack dabbing them in Alexandria and many other cities that have done things like that, to then get the Christian, like Christianity is beautiful. Abrahamic traditions are beautiful. But when the tyrant king takes too much hold and the institution wants to squeeze all things that don't conform to its structures and hierarchies, then all of a sudden you get things like what we're talking about. And this really strange thing about like the Gnostics only thinking that all materiality is evil, right? When some thought that, but that wasn't all of them. Iamblichus definitely, was a Platonist, also a Gnostic in his own way of trying to make this ascent. So I feel like a lot of this is a mistaking the map for the territory and not understanding a lot of these things. And then I think it's really important to go into why, Nick, like I think you are having this thing kind of come together is because of in the mainstream exoteric nonsensical idiots out there who have no fucking understanding of hide from tail. I don't know. There's like a saying, but like it's like these individuals are talking nonsense because they don't even know how to read books. These people don't know how to read books. They don't understand language. They don't understand symbolism, allegory, and tales of a human trying to like transform into something better. It's like chasing clicks instead of understanding that this is an alchemical process no matter what vehicle you use, right? The vehicle doesn't matter. You can get it through Christianity because they have tons of feminine saints, right? Nick, we were talking about the woman who fucking is brilliant and she does the music and
yeah. If you were to look at her liturgy, just what you can
Hildegard, right?
The church acknowledges that you could pray to her for. It was just like, why would you even fuck with any goddesses? Like, just the amount of shit that I'm just keeping it real. Like if you look at some of these women's liturgies, like what the fuck? These bitches were bad.
The Christian mystics, it's so important to not like throw the baby out the bathwater, which is what a lot of these fucking individuals do when they go total bro on us all,
Yeah.
I just want to. Sorry, Earl.
Yeah.
I just wanted to. Oh, sorry. Just really quick. I wanted to just say Plotinus was kind of more of like a specific case, and he does not represent all Neoplatonists. He was kind of extreme in his bias, but I do think it had a huge effect. And
sure.
Brandon is so right that it's, if you don't incorporate the physical, you can't reach rubedo.
Yeah, nice. Yeah.
What I was just going to say about like the idea of the bestial nature, like from a Buddhist perspective, I do not like the idea that we would ever include that with women, because I think that is something that has gone wrong in our world, is that women are the bestial. And that's what they look at Kali, they look at all these goddesses that are protectors, and they're like, that's a wild beast. And it's like, no, that is a goddess. Yeah, that is a fully embodied divine feminine protecting her right. And so I just like the idea of bestiality and like, bestial nature is, I think, from a perspective, like not something that we want to acknowledge as like a feminine quality. Yes, we are of the earth, but like the bestial nature from a perspective of Buddhism, and I think a lot of traditions, is a lower resonance of like the 10 worlds. So like one of the lowest worlds is the world of animality, because it doesn't have any sort of ability to control itself. And so if we put divine feminine with beasts, like that's not what it is. And so I find that is such a downfall for perhaps what happened in Christianity in that sense.
And
I just want to
that's
respond to
something.
that. Sorry, I'm going to respond to it really quick, Jules.
Okay.
So in Tantra, we actually do live in the animal world, and the dakinis are often depicted as riding vahanas of animals or with animal heads. Now, this is really important, and because we all live on the carnal ground as well as the garden. Right? Like we are non-dual, so we exist in both places at the same time. And this is maybe the difference between like Tantric Buddhism and like Mahayana Buddhism. But we really look at it like, yes, the divine feminine force can be non-dual, extremely ferocious, take blood offerings, be extremely destructive. They are agents of Mamos, which is the Tibetan word for chaos. They are Mamos goddesses. They are the embodiment of chaos. And yes, sometimes that can be of lower consciousness. It can be plagues, it can be war, it can be famine, it can be all of those things. And some of those goddesses are then propitiated to remove the Mamos that they create. So I just want to say that if you really take a non-dual perspective, it's both. They are not just divine. They have different stages of consciousness, like you were talking about, Kaiba, like from the lowest world to the highest world, but these are conceptual states of being. Just like we can aspire higher than the mid-tier God realms. This is my big contention with certain kinds of online paganism, is that they believe that we only stay static at this what we would consider in Tantra to be a mid-tier God world. But that's not the point of Buddhism. The point of Buddhism is to go to Or Ein Sof, or to go to the non-dual, like formless reality. But again, like to echo what both Brandon and Arrow said, it's not a rejection of the body. It's not a rejection of the three world system. It's an integration of those things through consciousness and through praxis. And I also wanted to say that I thought it was brilliant that Eros made the connection between Plotinus and St. Augustine, who was a Manichaean, which is a breakaway branch of Judaism, Christianity, Buddhism, and Zoroastrianism, and various other religions. He was a syncretist, and his whole idea of the world was dualistic. He believed that the body was fundamentally evil, and he believed that the spirit was fundamentally good, and that we are trapped in matter. So Tantric Buddhism reconciles this with the practice of mantra, because sound liberates light from matter. So yeah. I just wanted to say that, but yeah, I think that was brilliant that you said that, Eros, and it is an actual like historical connection between those two things, like rejection of body and sort of like that entry into Christian mysticism.
Shout out manas, and yeah, no, the Manichaeans had manas, and we actually talked about that on prior show. But to what Kaiva was saying, yeah, there is this kind of bestial nature, and men have to embody this. I think like it's a part of us, right? And so like I was talking about earlier, in Northern mythology and history, you have like the Ulfnar, right? The wolf warriors. You have the berserker that takes on these specific bestial archetypes, but it's to protect the feminine, right? It's to protect the women and the children. And this, and Jen, I know you don't like Wotan. I know you don't like Odin, but Odin had to work with Freya.
I like him
the
just
satyr
fine.
magic.
I like him just fine.
Okay. Well, he had to work with Freya to learn the satyr magic, right? Like he had to, in order to be who he is today, right? And he sent Brunhild to Sigurd to lead him on the right path, and then them both being in this, physical world, they both fell to their own, sins, I guess you could say. Yeah, and it's something, and now Odin, you see online people go, oh, he was a cross dresser, just because he embodied the divine feminine. It's pretty silly. It's like, do you read? I really want to ask people: do you take everything in the Bible literally? You can't interpret it as esoteric.
They do.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, it's fucking
bro.
Well, they do to a point.
It becomes
Because
esoteric.
They do to a point, because if you're looking at the divine feminine, there are plenty of books within the Old Testament that really glorify the events and the steps that women had taken in faith, and they're not spoken about. They're not demonized. They were, and someone put it in the chat, who chose the books that's in the current Bible that most people look at. There are plenty of books of women who exude the energy of the divine feminine that people don't even talk about. My named predecessor, Judith, is one of them. I didn't even know about her till I was older.
Nice.
These are feminines that everybody who's against the divine feminine, who are part of the Abrahamic religions, tend to overlook. Any argument they have against the divine feminine is knocked out if you look at these books, if you read these books. So I find it hard for someone to come at me and say they're devout and they don't know these books, they don't know these women, saints included, and demonize the divine feminine. They exude that energy. So you're telling me because it's not the norm now, the divine feminine's energy is satanic, but Judith was not? Mary is not?
Pick and
You gotta-
choose. They like to pick and choose.
Yeah, I was even going to say that. Like, I mean, how do you even like, you know, I mean, Mary popping out a kid without sex? I mean, that's not a divine feminine right there. How
Right.
do you-
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Yeah. And then all the cults that what you were talking about with the talk was parthenogenesis, right? So you had the idea of being able to create from, you know, just a single cell organism, creating it by itself, you know, parthenogenesis, the virgin birth. This was like meiosis or mitosis. It's like another reiteration of how, you know, things are created from nothing into something.
Something I wanted to touch on that's maybe kind of deep into our psyche as far as like the aversion. Kali is, of course, just one layer or personification of the divine feminine, but it's taken to be, oh, that's destructive, ruinous. But one simple metaphorical understanding of Kali being destructive and overcoming is the quality of women to help men develop. And it usually comes through not in a clash, but women are excellent at slicing off the superfluous silliness that men might think without the contrast and build of the feminine. And so the aversion to that, I think, is part of the dark psyche of men to be automatically, oh, it's a bad woman that's going to attack me. No, what's the symbolism, right? It's to really enhance the man. That's what women do.
Yeah. That like supernatural woman idea of leading you into
I'm
like
just
the
gonna
mysteries.
sorry, Brendan. I'm just gonna respond to Jules really quick about the Wotan Odin thing. It's not that I'm upset. I'm not at all, Jules.
Okay.
I don't dislike any deity. I have no problem with pagans. Don't ever at me, like anyone listening. I don't care. I'm not going to believe in your religion. I'm happy in my own. But
I respect
do
that.
not.
Yeah.
Okay. But I do not worship worldly gods at all. Point blank, period. I do not worship worldly gods. I take refuge in the Buddhas and the Buddhas alone. So people can understand that however they want. That's enlightened energy. It's not worldly energy. And so then, but
I would like to
respond
talk to you about that sometime.
Well, I'd love to, talk about cable and that with you anytime.
Yeah, man.
But
For sure.
yeah, I want to just respond. What Ethan said is correct. But I would say this is why we prefer the red Dakini forms in Buddhism, because then she embodies the Rajasic energy. It's not just the tamasic, destructive, sinful energy. She actually it has the ability to go like rubido, like Eros brought up. That's what it means. That's why she's depicted like that. She's bringing us into the heatless flame. She's bringing us into the perfection of wisdom through red practices. But yes, there are Dakinis can appear in all the colors of resplendent array. That's even how it's described. And different people have different karmas. So they'll be attracted to different forms of the whatever. If you want to call them a goddess, that's fine. But absolutely, like a black Dakini can be very powerful. It can be very good for people who have a lot of anger issues or have a lot of black magic directed at them. So it really depends. Like this is the part where upaya or skillfulness comes in. It's like just because you're at first glance attracted to a deity does not necessarily mean that you need to worship that deity. It actually might mean something deeper. It might mean something astrological. It might mean some kind of planetary karma you need to work through. Does not, because you are forming a karmic connection to that deity for multiple lifetimes. If you worship them, this is a real tantric way to think. So this is also why I don't worship worldly gods. So anyway, sorry about that.
Thank you. No, that's fine, dude. I was just kind of poking at you, man, because me and you poke at each other sometimes. So it's all in good fun. You're a good guy. And no, I'd love to have you on to actually talk about that, because no one's come on to talk about Kabbalah and that on my show from that point of view. So
well, I appreciate it. I get a lot of shit from pagans, Jules. That's the problem.
I hear you. I hear you, brother. I'll never give you shit, Jen. You're a good dude, and I like you. So yeah, man.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Fuck the gods.
That's
Thanks,
good.
Nick.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
There we go.
Well, I think that's Nick. I'm gonna frame off of that, and I like that, and I think it's really important, the fuck the gods thing, because it's to understand where we're at in our human consciousness, right? I think it's the idea of the gods, gets anthropomorphized, and we misunderstand the natural forces that we're trying to understand, not only in our the world, the external world, but also the embodied internal world. And the divine feminine, again, that's what we're talking about, is one principle that is a major principle that has many aspects and modes of being. And those modes of being of the many principles of the divine feminine also reflect themselves in the cyclical nature of the aeons and how we move through the cycles of time. And I also definitely agree with Jen as he's talking about every country or whatever a culture has their own time that they're moving within, because to bring up then Heidegger is that each one of us, Dasein, being there in the world, we are time embodied into the world. There's no time outside of human consciousness and the embodied action. Just like there is no human being without the divine feminine and divine masculine principles. And these principles are principles of forces of nature as they move through the world. And I think this is something really important to always come back to. And that's why magic is so important. Mysticism, however we want to talk about these things, is that we harness the ability to use these principles for good. Hopefully, not everyone does that, and it can be inverted, the even good that you're doing, right? I think fourth wave, third wave, second wave, first, maybe not first wave, I don't know, but feminism itself is an externalization of a masculine feminine push. It is happening because both sides are doing something, and all of a sudden you get a reaction cause Hegelian dialectic, and you get this to move through, and then we're arguing about what principles and forces of nature that we don't understand, and that we have to take to the temple, the pillow, wherever you sit and meditate and contemplate your existential existence of trying to balance these forces of nature. And so it's like a continual callback that I think we're all doing, because Carl Jung was trying to understand the unconscious mind, the psyche of these humans that walk in this world. And as he said, until we understand these forces, we will say that they are used against us. We are victims, and we will call this life fate. But we understand that if we can make the unconscious conscious, and that is again the divine feminine, which we have covered over, or the highest principles of the divine masculine, which now we see the inversion of the tyrannical king in America. I can't speak for anywhere else because I only live in America in this morphogenic field of trying to understand what the fuck is going on when you get these idiots talking on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube talking about things they don't understand because they still have mommy and daddy issues. So how can you understand these massive principles wherein you can't even control your own nature and your own forces and your own primal moves? We all are dealing with these things on a day-to-day basis. And I think it's really important that anybody out there, as you listen to this and you're trying to understand, should I be scared of the revelation, the scarlet whore, the lady of Babylon? Or can I understand that it's, in my view, again, this is just me, that the aspects of these two principles that we always are talking about, there's many, many more, of the whore and the virgin. These two are reflections of themselves, but we also have them within the divine masculine principles. They just take shape in a different way, because they're different forces of nature. And this is something that just boils up in me, and I just have to just put out there, because I think these are important topics.
May I say it's interesting, and I think maybe an elephant in the room type of thing is the hyper masculinization of women and the hyper feminization of men going on culturally.
Beautiful.
What if this is actually playing off of our emotions to avoid facing our own internal, as you might put it into simplicity, mommy and daddy issues, feminine and masculine issues when we're not in balance. And this is kind of playing off of us to pursue some kind of hyper one way or another that's actually totally out of balance. And with the idea that, I don't think I'm going to offend anyone here, but the idea that feminism is the pursuit of to be equal with perverse masculine pursuits is not feminism, right? It's feminism, is the feminine is not equal to men. It's much grander than that. I hope I'm being clear.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because my mind was going to the same place of harmony. Like when I do also think of the divine feminine, like I do think of all the dark abyss and all that looks chaotic, but is it actually chaotic, or does it just appear to be chaotic because we don't know divine order, right? So there is this idea that within the divine feminine, there is also this beautiful harmony that we try to control. And I think that's maybe why the divine feminine is demonized, is because people want to know what's going to happen. And they don't have the ability to just trust, like, divine harmony is unfolding, let it happen, right? So I love that you also were like tapping into that like balance, harmony, because I was like starting to I think I understand now what the divine feminine means just a little bit more. If we understand chaos is actually sometimes harmony, and it's important to let it play it out. And anybody who has a strong Uranus in their chart will know, how to use chaos, because it's like, oops, I guess I can't go do that thing. Oops, I guess, you know what I mean? Like there's an opportunity in chaos to ride it out and see how it could actually be going in your favor. Not all the times, but maybe it actually does all the time. I don't know.
I thought that was a great point, Kyla. I just want to say that. Like everything that you said, I 100% agree with it. I think that's what existence appearance is like they appear ferocious, they can appear with an animal head, but if you push through your own misperceptions and preconceptions, because she's really post-conceptual, that's really the tantric idea. She doesn't have any quality that we would describe her as. She's not gunasic, she's not tamasic, and she's not rajasic. She's post-conceptual. So once we let what we think of her go, then it really is what is revealed to us is like knowledge or wisdom, whatever. So no, I agree with that 100%. And I want to also compliment Brandon, because I did think that you did really good Kabbalah in your past comment when you were saying that time is really in the mind. You didn't say it quite like that, but yeah, I mean, I've also said this is like Bina happens at Yesod, so time in your mind, time in the nine. That's a good way to understand it, like as a mnemonic device. Yeah, that's exactly what happens. We have to perceive the world, but we're standing on the moon or standing at Yesod to do it. We're looking at the tree. So which way do you want to look, upwards or downwards? I think a lot of the dialectical games tend to shift our focus downwards. And I would say if we're truly non-dual, and maybe we're not all non-dual, maybe I'm not even non-dual, but at least conceptually, I'll just say that I think, and Tantra would agree with me, is that it's really important to look up. Like if we're conceptualizing reality as the tree rather than looking down, because looking up actually gives us a sense of agency, as well as it's not at all like how Hebrew Kabbalah describes it. It's all about humility and being humble. And I agree that we need virtue and we need to cultivate those like inner things that are going to like bring order together. But I think looking up is a lot more Promethean. So I think if we conceptualize it like that, we just can, actualize a lot of the path working better. So yeah, I just want to say this. Thanks, guys.
That was good. Thank you. Did anybody have anything else that they wanted to add? We're almost at 2 hours. Probably wrap it up at this point. No, nothing. All right. Sure.
Well, we probably could, but we are all like, we're like, well, we could. Part 2 is in order. 2 of 64, right? Part 2 of 64 is coming up soon.
Good for sure. That was great though. I really thought that was an awesome show. I really appreciate everybody's input on that. You know, it made me think about a lot of things myself as well, just the way I look at it. And just how it does differ in some areas. It's very interesting. And the reasoning behind that, who knows? Thank you all and everybody in the chat. Before we wrap it up, I will everybody plug their show again real quick. Judith, please let everybody know what's up with you.
This is actually, I can't wait for part 2. This was a wonderful conversation. It's nice to see everybody again, and everyone else. You can find me on YouTube, Spreaker, and X as The Loon. And in August, if you're in the New York area, I will be at the Pagan Pride at Stony Brook as well. I'm working out the details on that. So if you happen to be there, stop by.
I said, you know, when you told me about that, I was actually going to ask you if that was in Stony Brook.
Yes, this
I
is
remember
Stony
when
Brook.
I was in, even when I lived out in Long Island, when I was in the OTO, I remember it was out at Stony Brook. I was like, shit.
I was more familiar with the one in the city, but they don't have that one anymore. So I'm looking forward to it.
There should be a good turnout out there, I would think. That's a nice, good for you. When you told me that, I was rather impressed. I was like, that's actually a good spot for promotion, in my opinion. Good. Jin the Ninja, what is up?
Thanks, boss. I really had fun, obviously. I love, playing the polarities and doing this adversarial sort of like role, I guess. So if people want to check me out, they can check me out at Threshold Saints on IG and also X, and my personal account at Wukong Reborn. And all my links are there. Obviously, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, Substack, it's all there. And thank you to Kaiva, Ethan, Brandon, Jules, and of course Eros, and a double of course to Judith. Thank you so much, and thank you for the question. I really appreciate it, and I also had a blast. So thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
No, thank you. I appreciate you making it, Jen. My man. And Kaiva, what is going on, Kaiva?
Yeah, thanks for having me on the chat. This was really fun to circle through everybody's brains and come to like some new understandings. It was great. So everybody can find me at 11kaivarose33.com. That's my website if you'd like to schedule a reading. You can also find me on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Kaiva Rose. I do weekly and daily astrology videos. So looking forward to seeing you all soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate you making it, Kaiva. Ethan Indigo, my man, what is up?
Once again, thank you guys for the education and the inspiration. And every time we get together like this, it's like, occult intelligence. So I appreciate you guys immensely. Ethan Indigo Smith on all the social media. I really appreciate interaction and communication. If anyone wants to reach out, and I should be easy to find. And appreciate you guys.
No, thank you, Ethan. I always appreciate it when you make it on, sir. For real. Brandon, what is up, Magus? Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you. Nick putting this on. The Occult Rejects, as he said, is a ragtag of Wu-Tang Clan members. We all ain't nothing to fuck with, as they say. And so I think it's really important that people know that if they, a true safe space is one where you can speak freely and be able to take, like we all have different ways we're all sovereign magicians. And I think that's something that everyone, and that's my view, is that everyone eventually will figure that out for themselves, whatever words they want to use. And the dialectic, the conversation is why we're here. It's the public square. And this is where we are supposed to do these types of things and have these types of conversations. And so everyone out there is a lot of strange things going on in this world. And the best way to get through it is with a community of individuals who can have hard conversations during hard times. And so thank you to Nick. Thank you to everyone, Jin, Judith, Kaiva, Ethan, Jules, and Eros. This is how it's done, and this is how the future is changed for the good. And so everyone can find Magus in the media on all the things. Subscribe, like, and share to me and all these beautiful people, from the Rejects to Kaiva Rose to Threshold Saints to what Judith is doing to the gray pilled Ethan Indigo with his Tai Chi magic and Eros as she platonizes herself up towards the forms. And so everyone out there, thank you for such a wonderful evening.
That was awesome, dude. Thank you so much. Thank you. Eros, what is going on, Eros?
Thanks, guys. This was a lot of fun. Yeah, this was awesome. I always have so much fun. And obviously, I watch you guys all individually, so it's fun to be able to talk with you guys because you're all very entertaining and always have such good things to say. So thank you. You can find me at YouTube as Erosup, and then you can find me on Twitter at Eros to Ethos.
Thank you very much for coming on here. I appreciate it, Eros. Always do. My man Jules, what is
All
it?
right, man. Thank you for having me on, Nick. This was an incredible discussion. I actually learned a lot, as I always do, and I can't wait for part 2. So, if you're watching, go over to occultresearchinstitute.org. Check everyone out there. Go over and follow at the Occult Rejects on YouTube. You can find me on X at greypilledpodcast, and then go over to Rumble, YouTube, or Patreon. Check out what we're doing over there. Gods of the Morningwood next week. Box Saga and Adepts in the Western Esoteric Traditions, like part 8, I think. So Occult Cinema this week as well. We're doing Begonia. So I will... Yeah, I got to check with Zaralap, but we, that's a Patreon show. So if you want to find most of my content, you can go over to Patreon. The live stream last night got taken down off YouTube for hate speech. So I don't know what I said, but the algorithms didn't like it. But may do another one tonight. Who knows? Anyway, again, this was great. Thank you guys, and like I said, can't wait for next time. Got to get Miss Babylon in here. She was in the chat throughout the whole show.
Yeah, I saw that.
She loves you guys. I mean, she did numerous Grey Pilled streams and hated my entire audience, but then she comes on the Occult Rejects one time, and it's like, blissful. So
that's awesome.
Thank you guys for,
Of course, thank you, Jules. I was glad you could make it, man. I was glad you were able to make it tonight.
Thank you, Nick.
Yeah, I had a blast. We definitely do a part 2. There was plenty of things that I could have still went on about or nerded out on, or just different ways I look at, the divine feminine. But yeah, it was a blast. Everybody in the chat, that's what's up. I appreciate any comments in there or people trying to add to what we're talking about. That's what's up. That's why we go live. And yeah, until the next one, everybody be well.